Welcome back. Bit of transfer news.
And it's a deal we've been expecting to happen. Kalvin Phillips.
Kalvin Phillips.
Kalvin Phillips.
With Kalvin Phillips.
What about that Kalvin Phillips link? Would that be a good...
This thing's been on everyone's mind. What really happened to Kalvin Phillips? Phillips had a nightmare at Man City. He's added some shiny medals to his collection, but at what cost? He's barely been on the pitch. It's been a rough 18 months for him at the Etihad Stadium. So what's the deal with Kalvin Phillips? Kalvin Phillips has had a pretty remarkable rise since his debut for his boyhood club Leeds back in 2015. Remember Leeds' promotion season under Marcelo Bielsa? Phillips was a total standout in midfield. He was so good that he became only the third player this century to represent England before even playing a single Premier League game. Crazy, right? He made his England debut in a Nations League match against Denmark in September 2020. Just 4 days later, he was back with Leeds, marking Leeds' long-awaited return to the Premier League. Phillips is a Leeds youth product who went on to make over 200 appearances for the club. He just kept getting better. During the 2020-21 season, he was on fire for both club and country. He played a huge role in Leeds finishing 9th in the Premier League and was then a star for England in their run to the final of the delayed Euro 2020. But then things took a turn. Phillips missed much of the 2021-22 season due to injury, and his absence was a big reason Leeds struggled in their second season back in the top flight. This struggle even led to Bielsa's departure. Kalvin Phillips' transfer to Manchester City made perfect sense in the summer of 2022. The midfielder had refined his playing style under Marcelo Bielsa, one of Pep Guardiola's coaching mentors. The £42 million transfer fee wasn't exactly cheap, but it wasn't crazy expensive either for an England international with plenty of Premier League experience. Everyone thought Phillips would have a short adaptation period before securing a regular spot in Guardiola's winning machine. But oh boy, things didn't go as planned. Phillips' time at City has been a huge ordeal for everyone involved. The 28-year-old has made just 6 starts in all competitions over 18 months. That averages out to £7 million per appearance in Guardiola's lineup. And to make things worse, City has lost half of the matches he's started. Phillips hasn't really shone in any of them, and his reputation has taken a massive hit. Right after his arrival from Ellen Road, Phillips was an unused substitute in City's 2022 Community Shield defeat to Liverpool. He got a few minutes in their Premier League opener against West Ham and made his first start for City in a friendly against Barcelona. But just as he was starting to make a positive impression at Camp Nou, disaster struck. Phillips was forced off with a shoulder injury. He didn't play for a whole month after that injury. He made his comeback in the Champions League away to Sevilla as a substitute and also came off the bench at home against Borussia Dortmund a week later. But then, things took another bad turn. Phillips needed surgery to treat his shoulder problem, which put him out of action for nearly 2 months. He only returned in early November for the Carabao Cup win over Chelsea. Despite his long period out, Phillips was picked by Southgate for the World Cup in Qatar. He came on against Wales and Senegal, but didn't play in England's quarter-final defeat by France. When the season resumed, Guardiola made a shocking revelation about Phillips' absence from the squad. He said, "He's not injured, he arrived overweight, he didn't arrive in the condition to do training sessions and to play." Phillips later claimed he wasn't overweight and admitted he found the criticism hard to take. He quickly set about returning to full fitness and was on the bench for City's next game at Leeds, though he didn't get on the pitch. This became a familiar story throughout the season, even as Guardiola began using more squad players in the Premier League run-in, with games coming thick and fast as City chased the treble. Phillips instead received another rebuke from Guardiola. The coach urged him to provide more competition for Rodri, who'd become an undisputed starter despite Phillips' arrival. "He has to fight with Rodri for the benefit of us all," Guardiola said in January. "Rodri cannot sleep and must have the feeling there is someone close to him to do it. He has to." While City sped towards a historic treble, Phillips barely got off the bench. He ended the season with just 2 Premier League starts, both of which came after City had already wrapped up the title. He didn't start any games in the Champions League campaign. He did start in the Carabao Cup against Southampton, but City were beaten in what Guardiola called one of the worst performances of his time at the club. Phillips was subbed off in the second half. Another rare start came in the FA Cup 5th round against Bristol City, but most damningly, he didn't start in the FA Cup semi-final against Sheffield United, even though Guardiola rested most of his regular starters. The sad truth is, Phillips' biggest contribution to City's treble success was pouring a drink into Jack Grealish's mouth during the team's parade through Manchester after winning the Champions League. Despite playing so little, Phillips vowed to stay at City and resisted a loan move, and Phillips was given an unexpected chance to stake his claim in Guardiola's lineup when Rodri was sent off against Nottingham Forest and received a 3-match suspension. Phillips had impressed off the bench against Forest as City had to scrap to protect a 2-0 lead, and he looked set for a consistent run in the side, at least while the Spaniard was out. However, he failed his first test, putting in a mediocre performance in the Carabao Cup defeat at Newcastle. He was then left out of the lineup against Wolves and Arsenal, games which City also lost. These defeats didn't help Phillips' cause, as they just highlighted Rodri's importance to the team. Having made no more starts for 2 months, Guardiola effectively admitted in December that he didn't imagine Phillips ever playing for him consistently. Asked about the midfielder before City's visit to Luton, the coach gave a strikingly honest answer. "I don't know what will happen to Kalvin Phillips," Guardiola said. "He has good character. I'm so sorry I have not picked him. I visualise my team and select a team and I struggle to see him." Phillips got one last hurrah when he was picked in City's final Champions League group game away to Red Star Belgrade. Like many of his previous starts, it was essentially a meaningless game for City as they had already qualified for the knockout stage as group winners. Phillips was afforded his one moment in the sunshine when City were awarded a late penalty and he was given the ball. Phillips scored from the spot, getting his first and more than likely last goal for the club. Phillips just couldn't fit into Guardiola's plans, and as he is left to join West Ham on loan in a bid to show off his value to Gareth Southgate ahead of Euro 2024, he might go down as one of the worst signings Guardiola has ever made. But he has struggled with the East London side too. From the high of being named England's Player of the Year in 2021 to the low of being ignored by both club and country less than 3 years later, the drop-off in Kalvin Phillips' career has been stark. Struggling for games during a loan spell at West Ham United that was supposed to revitalise his career after a disastrous 18 months at Manchester City, his West Ham loan ended with a mystery injury, all but ending the midfielder's hopes of making England's Euro squad, and he couldn't. City have insisted that Phillips could still have a future at the club, but the more likely the outcome is that he leaves permanently at the end of the season. Reports suggest that at some stage, Rodri could return to Spain, but there's little confidence Phillips can step up and take over when the time comes. It's likely Guardiola has already seen enough. And that wraps up the story of Kalvin Phillips' tough journey at Manchester City and West Ham. What do you guys think? Will he bounce back, or is his best football behind him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more football stories.